T. Higgins is in, DK Metcalf is in, and Amari Cooper looks like a true questionable. This is why we wait till the end of the week every week to go through every single matchup to find the must start and sit wide receivers in fantasy football. And I'm the only fantasy YouTuber who works on a Saturday to get you this type of content, so make sure to go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So get into our first matchup right here. We got the Raiders at the Dolphins this week. And listen, I don't consider any of these guys must start. With Tyreek Hill, we all already know what his situation has been since Tua's been back. Obviously, his upside has been better, but with that injury, it just doesn't get completely healed up. Because last week he got back into the end zone, and look how that worked out for fantasy football. It just wasn't good enough for fantasy football to be able to consider him a must start. So yes, he's the best play, but he's definitely not a must start by any means. I would consider Tyreek a pretty decent end flex option, whereas Jacoby Myers, honestly, not that far back behind him. Like Jacoby Myers, if Jalen Ramsey was missing this game, I would say Jacoby Myers actually be a better play because he's in line to get 12, 11, 10 targets and be really efficient on all his work. But Jalen Ramsey is playing in this game, so it definitely doesn't make me feel super confident about Jacoby Myers, but I do feel good enough to put him at the second best option ahead of Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle with Tua he's just been bad this year. Like Jalen Waddle is always capable of a big play, which makes me okay to play him. And I would just call him a lower mid end flex option. Jalen Waddle has not done enough this year to warrant himself as a high end flex. He just has not done enough this year. And then I'm sitting Odell and I'm sitting Trey Tucker as well. The Cleveland Browns at the New Orleans Saints this week with Cedric Tillman. I called him a must start on the must start video, and I believe this is absolutely perfect for him. First of all, Cleveland's coming out of a bye week, so they're well rested. Jameis Winston with Cedric Tillman, 3 games straight have been dominant in fantasy football. He's getting like 12 targets per game, basically. And he's taking on the Saints, who are atrocious versus the wide receiver position. It doesn't get much better than Cedric Tillman. I would personally start Cedric Tillman over Tyreek Hill. It's all there for him. He's going to do well in this Saints matchup right here. And I would say the best flex of the bunch, maybe just by a little bit, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. But I want to make this very, very clear. All of these guys in the same tier. Valdes-Scantling, Jerry Jeudy, and Cedric Wilson Jr., if he ends up playing, they're all in the same tier. I would probably end up preferring Cedric Wilson over Marquez Valdes-Scantling if he was to play. But he's coming into this game completely questionable. We don't know if he's going to play, but he's going to be the possession receiver rather than Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Valdes-Scantling is just a big play threat. He's Rashid Shaheed, but a worse version of Rashid Shaheed. That's essentially what it boils down to. So I don't really know if I can confidently say to play any of these guys. And Jerry Jeudy is in the same boat as them. Cedric Tillman is the wide receiver 1 in Cleveland. It's not Jerry Jeudy. So I think they're all pretty low-end flex options if you ask me, and I'm not playing Elijah Moore. The Indianapolis Colts at the New York Jets this week. With Garrett Wilson, of course he's a must-start. With the wide receiver position being what it is this year, which is largely pretty disappointing and inefficient, I would say that Garrett Wilson has to be a must-start every week. This matchup is already good enough for it to be a must-start. Garrett Wilson sometimes will disappoint you, lay a little bit of an egg in his terms, kind of like he did last week. But either way, Garrett Wilson's still a great play in fantasy every single week. And I would say Devontae Adams, at this point, I prefer him over Josh Downs, over Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman cleared to play, but you know what they have in common? This is a problem because they have Anthony Richardson playing for them right now. Anthony Richardson just doesn't, even though Joe Flacco sucked, during his 2-week span where they actually let him play, he was still better for fantasy football upside than what Anthony Richardson can provide. Josh Downs and Michael Pittman. So it's just not a good situation to take advantage of here. Devontae Adams, again, my favorite flex option. Not a must start, but definitely is my favorite flex option because of the matchup and because he doesn't have to deal with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Instead, he gets Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers this week on Underdog is projected to get only 0.5 total yards. So obviously, you hit the higher on this one, you're basically winning free money. For new customers, if you want to get in and hit the higher on this one and win some free money, you use code FFN to sign up for Underdog. And when you sign up for Underdog using code FFN, and when you take advantage and hit the higher on the sweat-free pick with Aaron Rodgers this week, they'll match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Now, getting into our next matchup, the Minnesota Vikings at the Tennessee Titans this week. With Justin Jefferson, we already know he's a must-start guy. Yeah, he had a little bit of a down week last week, but everyone has those, even the best of the best. You continue to play Justin Jefferson regardless of what the matchup looks like for Justin Jefferson. Calvin Ridley, I'm saying he's a must-start this week, and I'll tell you why. With Calvin Ridley, the last several weeks, ever since they traded D-Hop away, actually, he's been hogging the targets, as he should be. And he's been actually able to capitalize with both Mason Rudolph and with Will Levis. So with Will Levis starting, we actually do have some proof that it can happen when he's the only guy around. And he is that only guy around right now versus the Vikings defense that the one area they've been susceptible to is through the air. The wide receiver position in fantasy does pretty well against the Vikings on a week-to-week basis. So I do consider, with all things considered here at the wide receiver position, Calvin Ridley needs to go in your lineup this week. I think the matchup's there and the production has been there with Will Levis lately. Jordan Addison continues to be flexible. The only reason, though, is if you need to take a big, deep shot. Because he can hit you on a big, long ball. That's what he can do for sure in fantasy football is sometimes he does have the big play upside. But you know the way I look at this one is kind of like a Jalen Waddle type, where if you don't get the big play, he's going to break your week because he could probably end up getting a much safer floor at your flex position. Understand if you play Jordan Addison, the floor is not very safe here. Now getting into our next one, the Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears this week. And listen, I'm going to get flack for it. I'm starting Jaden Reed though. You know, Jaden Reed, Deebo Samuel Jr., you're going to get big games. You're going to get some down games as well. Now, his last, over the last month of him, you've gotten a mixture of like playable games and like not playable games. Jaden Reed goes into the bye week, coming out this week, probably another week healthier because he has been dealing with an ankle injury that has definitely hindered him. So I just kind of like it being there, even though the matchup like theoretically is not fantastic. The Bears defense has gotten worse over the, ever since they came out of the bye. So I don't look at the Bears defense the same as I did before the bye week. Their team, I think their culture is a mess right now. So I think the Packers can take advantage. I'm playing Jaden Reed. And then obviously there's a big mess. You can play so many options here. You could play Romeo, you could play Rome, you could play DJ, you could play Keenan, you could play Christian Watson. You could probably play Dontavian Wicks if you really wanted to as well. But I think the Packers are going to end up winning this game, so there's not going to be tons of throwing upside to multiple guys here. Romeo is still the number one flex in this group right here because Romeo is still running a good enough number of routes on a weekly basis, and he obviously has the quarterback to throw to him. But all these Bears receivers, they're all in the same tier, and they're all basically mid-flex guys. Like, these guys are not anybody that you could rely on a very consistent basis because Caleb just isn't getting it done. He's just simply not cutting it in fantasy football. For all these receivers right here, they're all really talented and it's not working. The Packers defense is not like the worst matchup either, but I just can't like put much confidence into these Bears players right now. They're all mid-tier options. You can pick anyone you want, but they're all in the same tier at this point. I don't see anybody being ahead of the other. They're all just in the same area right now. Christian Watson, probably the least likely option that I would play in this matchup. I'd probably play all Bears options before him. The Jacksonville Jaguars at the Detroit Lions this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown is, of course, must start as well. Listen, I think this game, I think everybody knows it too. I think it's going to get out of hand early. And so he kind of has this like little window to capitalize on. But here's the reality, like you don't sit Amon-Ra St. Brown because he may end up getting 2 touchdowns in this game. Like you just don't sit Amon-Ra St. Brown when the matchup is this good against the Jacksonville Jaguars and they're going to put up a ton of points early and he may, get a touchdown or even 2. So I'm just like, you can't convince me just because of game script to sit Amon-Ra St. Brown. Brian Thomas Jr. and Jameson Williams, they're in the same category. I'll tell you, if this was a more competitive matchup though, then I would play Jameson over Brian Thomas. I mean, Brian Thomas, like with Mac Jones, like this is a peewee football team, basically taking on like an NFL team. Like Mac Jones is an XFL quarterback. I think I could do this better. The Lions are going to spank the Jaguars like a baby seal. It's going to be a disgusting game to watch. And I think Brian Thomas Jr., just because he's the number one option, still maintains flexibility, But with Mac Jones, it's disgraceful. It's totally disgraceful. And that's why you can't play any other Jags receiver either. Like, Parker Washington should theoretically get targets, but they're probably all going to be for like 5 to 6 yards down the field, and it's just not going to be worth playing in fantasy football. The Los Angeles Rams at the New England Patriots this week, and I think that both of these Rams receivers, I said this on the wide receiver rankings video this week, they were both back-to-back because they can't, like, neither one of them is separated quite yet. Because Puka is he out-targeted Cooper Kupp last week, but at the same time, Cooper Kupp was actually better and more efficient on his targets. So it doesn't, like, there's just not a clear separation to me that either one of these guys has made. Puka may very well be the number one in targets, but Cooper Kupp still gets a lot of high percentage throws, and he also gets more targets at the red zone as well. So they're both great options. I'm not going to debate which one's better. They're both fantastic in this matchup versus the New England Patriots. And I would say that Demario Douglas is the better flex option than Demarcus Robinson this week. Look, Douglas, his floor is actually pretty safe. With Drake May, he provides enough upside against every opponent because he actually has talent when Jacoby Brissett is just washed up. So it's like with, Drake May, he actually provides his receivers some upside. Demario Douglas is not a big play threat. Obviously, he's just more of a target guy. But I think on a weekly basis, we can see that kind of work from Demario Douglas to give me enough confidence that at least he'll be a flexible player. Demarcus Robinson, just because of touchdown upside, it's the exact opposite of what Demario Douglas can do. So I would say you can play him, but it's not my favorite play. The Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Get ready for a ground and pound game. This is going to be a slugfest. It will not be what you think it could be. This is not going to be tons of passing in the air, which is why I think George Pickens is the best start of the bunch. I called him a must start this week for many reasons. Number one, George Pickens here is the only option in Pittsburgh. It's occasionally a Calvin Austin throw or a Van Jefferson throw or a Mike Williams throw, but George Pickens is handling the volume in the Pittsburgh passing room. Number two, the Ravens are horrific against wide receivers, dead last against wide receivers in fantasy football. And number three, this game will not provide enough upside for multiple options here because, again, it's going to be a ground and pound type of game right here. Pickens has the best upside because he's the only option in Pittsburgh. Whereas you look at all these Ravens receivers, I think they're all startable. I would say Zay is the best play because of big play upside here. And I would also play Deontay over Rashad Bateman. I think Deontay Johnson, it's a revenge game narrative versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. He will have more of a role this week than he has had for 2 weeks now with the Ravens. I think that it's actually going to be much more involved in this game, and it may catch people by surprise. I think he's the second best flex option, and just because of a big play threat, Bateman is flexible, but I do think that Zay is the best play of the bunch, although none of them are fantastic plays this week because, again, this is not going to be one of those games where Lamar throws 30 times for like 300 yards. It just won't be that type of game. The Seattle Seahawks at the San Francisco 49ers this week. And listen, with Deebo Samuel and DK, they're both must-start guys to me just because they both have the big play threat. Now, obviously with Deebo, he's been a little bit disappointing, especially as of late. Deebo Samuel, the first game against the Seattle Seahawks, he looked pretty good. Like, it actually was working out pretty well for him. So I would say that in this matchup versus Seattle's defense, it just looks good because their defense is still not 100% healthy. And then with DK here, you obviously get him back in your lineup. He's the big play threat that they have, and that does move Jack Smith-Njigba down. Now, Juwan Jennings, to me, is really like going to be borderline must-start the majority of the rest of the year. Because Juwan Jennings is your only real true wide receiver outside of Ricky Pearsall. Like, Deebo is different. Obviously, we all know Deebo's a different type of cat. He's not always just like an outside wide receiver ripping off beautiful routes. That's more Juwan Jennings' game. So he's going to be a high-end flex option, a borderline must-start every single week for me moving forward. I love playing Juwan Jennings, and I like him better than JSN this week. I like JSN, but at the same time, you can't look at what he did before the bye week with that massive explosion game and think you're going to get anything close to that anytime soon. With DK back, it takes away the big play upside with Jackson Smith-Njigba, so it's going to be more matchup dependent, and this matchup isn't fantastic. And I don't love Ricky Pearsall in this one as much as I like Juwan Jennings. He beat out Juwan Jennings last week in fantasy because of the big play. It wasn't because he got more volume and because it's more sustainable. It's more sustainable with Juwan Jennings here. So I do think that this is going to be a situation where Juwan Jennings moving forward is just a better option than Ricky Pearsall is moving forward. The Atlanta Falcons at the Denver Broncos this week. There's no must starts here because of the fact that Drake London, I said it earlier in the week, and I haven't actually gotten a ton of pushback for it. I may have seen like 1 or 2 people push back on this one. He's not a must start because of the matchup. Pat Surtain is the best lockdown corner in the entire league. It's not close. He has beaten every single wide receiver one that he's taken on. It's actually ridiculous how good he is taking away wide receiver ones. So yes, Drake London is still the best play in this game, but he's not a must start. Like, I would be playing somebody like a Juwan Jennings personally over Drake London. I personally would. And honestly, I might play Darnell Mooney over him. Darnell Mooney, I think, in this matchup, where he gets to take on the number 2 corner in this game, and he's more in the slot anyways as well, I think that Darnell Mooney actually has a lot of upside in this matchup right here. So Darnell Mooney, Drake London, they're really, really close to me. I'd probably end up playing Darnell Mooney in my situation if I had both of them. But I'm not telling you you have to. I just think that's the way I would personally lean, because I just think Mooney probably has more upside this week than Drake London does. Courtland Sutton, I will say this, guys. Sutton has been really good the past several weeks. Bo Nix is coming through in a big way, and I do think it's very sustainable. So I really like Courtland Sutton moving forward, actually. He's not a must start. He's not better than these guys, but in a lot of matchups moving forward, you'll probably see Courtland Sutton towards the top of the flex list, potentially moving into must start territory the more he does well. I think Courtland Sutton is a really fine play at the flex position this week. He's just been really good lately. The Kansas City Chiefs at the Buffalo Bills. D-Hop, I eventually just I wrestled with this one all week, to be honest with you guys. Last week, he wasn't a must-start for me because he was taking on Pat Surtain. Pat Surtain got the best of him. This matchup versus Buffalo is obviously better, but I do think that it won't be as good as it looks on paper. But I ultimately decided to go with D-Hop as a must-start. He's filling that Rashee Rice role pretty well for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I just can't rely on any. I think that this will be a competitive game. It's going to be a great game to watch. So ultimately, I want options in this matchup. I'll go with D-Hop as a must-start guy. I think that just with the wide receiver position as it is, I do think that D-Hop is worthy of a must-start. And then all these Buffalo receivers, it depends on what happens. Obviously, Keon Coleman is out. Don Kincaid is out as well. Amari Cooper, true questionable in this matchup right here. If he goes, he's my favorite option of the bunch. I do think that this matchup will probably favor more of an Amari Cooper game than it would with a Khalil Shakir game, because Khalil Shakir will be taking on probably guys like Trent McDuffie and a couple of other really good players for the Chiefs in that secondary. They're going to be really good because they're excellent against wide receivers in fantasy. So I would favor the better wide receiver, which is usually Amari Cooper. But if he doesn't play, Mac Hollins is the better play than Khalil Shakir. He has proven it to be the case. Anytime Amari or Keon Coleman has been out, Khalil Shakir has not proven that he's the wide receiver one. He's actually done the opposite and he's actually proven that he's not a wide receiver one in fantasy football. So I think if Amari Cooper sits, then Mac Hollins is the better option here. But you can't play Xavier Worthy, guys. It just hasn't developed to what I thought it could be, and it's just ultimately disappointing because he's nothing more than a big play threat, and it's not even working lately. The Cincinnati Bengals at the Los Angeles Chargers, our Sunday night game. Jamar Chase, you obviously fire him up. There's no need to talk about it. T. Higgins coming back. I'm excited to have T. Higgins back. I accidentally said he was out yesterday on the defense video. I meant to say T. Higgins is in, but T. Higgins, you obviously go ahead and play him as well. T. Higgins has been, on a per-game perspective, excellent this year in fantasy. This is not a great matchup for either one of these guys. Honestly, they're one of the few situations I don't care what matchup it is. The Bengals are excellent through the air. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have kept this team afloat. This offense is moving really well right now because of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and now T. Higgins is back. And I think that both these Chargers receivers are very flexible as well. Lott is still the best option because he's going to get the majority of the targets. But Quentin Johnston is filling his role really, really well this year. It's actually been awesome to see. Quentin Johnston, Still not getting a bunch of targets, but he's very, very efficient with his work, and he's a big play threat. And in this matchup versus the Bengals, who are not fantastic against receivers, I do think that this is a very beatable matchup here. So I would, in a lot of situations, play Quentin Johnston. I'm personally playing him in a redraft league, and I would, of course, play Ladd McConkey over Quentin Johnston this week as well, and I'm just not playing Josh Palmer. And then the Houston Texans at the Dallas Cowboys. Our Monday night matchup, Nico Collins is back. Nico's back. Everybody rejoice. He goes right back into your lineup, especially against the Cowboys. They're a disgraceful defense. The Texans are also going to beat the Cowboys like a baby seal. They're going to spank them so hard. So Nico goes right into your lineup, and CD is a high-end flex. Like, he is not a must-start flex. Listen, I'm sorry. 10 targets last week amounted to almost nothing because Cooper Rush and Trey Lance are disgraceful. He needs 15 targets, and this matchup is also not good as well. It's not much better than the Eagles matchup. I don't think it is better, actually. So it's just, to call him a must-start would be dishonest, I think. Just because he has a big name doesn't mean he's a must-start. There's better options this week than CeeDee Lamb. A lot better, and I can pick him out. Tank Dell. Whatever. I mean, if you want to torture yourself with Tank Dell, go ahead and do it. I think he's fine. We'll see how he does with Nico Collins, but I'm not playing Tank Dell the majority of the time. I would say that he is probably nothing more than a middle-tier flex option for me. So let me know how your lineup looks this weekend. If you want to see where all these receivers ranked in my top 30 receiver rankings this week, click on this video right here.